Bill, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Really is.
I've been following your work for years, so it really is an honor to have you by our center. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for inviting me. I love this place.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I want to talk to you about one of the core pieces of your work that I just follow really closely is the interest-based nervous system. I hadn't heard that before, but with ADHD, it's like one of those light bulb things that just makes sense when you hear it. Can you tell me about the interest-based nervous system, please?
I'm not a researcher. I'm a practitioner. I've been sitting with thousands of patients for 50 years. What I noticed in my ADHD patients was that they didn't have impairments all the time. In fact, they had extended periods of time when they could overcome procrastination, get engaged with their tasks, get access to their tremendous abilities. I mean, for reasons unknown, people with ADHD are much smarter than the average person. Average IQ is 123. That means half of people are above that. But they can get access to that, really get engaged, not distracted, complete attention with the task, and do a huge amount of high-quality work in a very short period of time, and then they're back in la la.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, when did things go right? How did this happen? And so I would talk to people. Now, are you aware that what got you in there? And basically, I heard it was 5 things. They would also start with what they tried to make work their entire lives, never worked once. And that's what neurotypical people have over people with ADHD. These are neurotypical people. The other 90% of people use, it's important. And they have a luxury. It doesn't have to be important to them. It can be important to their teacher, to their boss, to their spouse. And so they're able to use secondhand importance, and that they get a reward for doing it, or there's a consequence if they don't. I'm a firm believer in asking the right questions. So one of the questions I ask people is, look back over your lives. Can you remember even one time in your life in which the importance of the task all by itself ever was up you in the slightest? Or has it just been a nag? Thus far, everybody said, that's just awful. So what that tells you is the things that they are consistent that they do in a standard school system are setups for failure because it's never once worked. And also, it really puts parents, usually mom, behind the 8 ball because they want the kid to do his homework. It's important. You have to turn it in. You get a grade. And it doesn't work. The kid sort of wanders off. And so it puts mom in the role of being a nag. And let the battle begin. And so it just doesn't work. But most parents don't have anything else to offer. So they keep on doubling down. So there are 5 things that ADHD people use reliably to get themselves engaged. The big one is interest. And there are a lot of other words in them. Literature psychologists call it fascination. Educational psychologists call it curiosity. It's the same idea. If you're interested in something, it comes easy. You start it, get access to your abilities, wonderful. Second thing is competition or challenge. If you say, well, I'm going to beat that guy. Or even better, when somebody says, oh, you can't do that. If the response from the kid is, oh, yeah, doesn't matter what the task was, they'll have mastered it by the end of the day because they accepted the challenge. Third one is novelty. This is why people get into new sports and activities and hobbies, and then they lose that sense of novelty. It's gone. You have to do something else. So that one, by definition, is time limited. It works, but it's time limited. Fourth one is the favorite of students, and that's urgency. Right at the do-or-die deadline, usually, but not always, they're able to get engaged, turn out a huge amount of fairly high-quality work in a short period of time, and it's gone again. This is the person who starts the term paper at 2 in the morning before it's due at 8. That one is risky because you really have to walk a razor's edge. You have to get the stress and urgency and anxiety up to where you can finally overcome the procrastination, where it doesn't go too far into being overwhelmed. So while it does work, usually people pay a high price for it. The fourth one is one you tend to see in adults, and that is what we call passion. What is it about my life that gives it purpose and meaning? What is it about my life that when I wake up in the morning, I am eager to go do? Only about 25% of 4th of my patients ever find that. In fact, I think that's pretty typical for everybody. Most people don't know why they're here or what their purpose is. A technique that I use is, again, most people don't know what they desire, but everybody knows what they regret. And so I ask them, imagine you're 85 years old, sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair with a lifelong friend, and you start the following sentence. Back in February of 2026, if I were to have led my life without a single regret, I wish I haven't finished the sentence. What you'll find is virtually never does somebody talk about something they regret that they did. Almost always, it was the opportunity they didn't seize. They regret what they didn't do. And so that, for most people, can give them direction when they don't know what they desire. Everybody has regrets, and I'll tell you all about it. So you make use of that. So it's interest, challenge, novelty, urgency, and you hope passion, because that's the one that lasts.
I have so many questions based on that, and it makes perfect sense for families. I know for the students with ADHD we see, it's not uncommon for them to have an A in one or two classes and Fs in the other. And no matter how many times we're like, don't you want to get into college? Don't you want to get this thing?
Yes, they do.
But it doesn't land, right? And so what do you say to those families where the student's highly interested in one or two subjects, but they're just bombing every other subject? Like, how do we think about that with our current school system?
I go back to first principles. I start with, it's an old saying, actually, it's not mine, every child will do well if they can. So it's the recognition, this is a good kid. He's very smart. The problem is he can't get engaged with these topics. One of the ways we get around that is when we do IEPs. One of the things that's in every one is that this kid gets to register for classes first. And we encourage them to go and actually sit in classes. So if there are 5 English classes, at a university there are 100 English classes, find out which teacher got the best ratings last year. Go and sit and, wow, this guy's really engaging. In that guy's course, you'll make an A. In another guy's course, where he can tell you exactly how many days and minutes it is till he retires, you'll struggle to make a D. Same course. Is the teacher a really good teacher who also is engaged and loves what they're doing? So that needs to be a part of every IEP. The other one, going back just a little bit, is that the teacher is required, if they have a term project, a term paper, whatever, if they have to show the student what an A project looked like last year. Once the kid has in his mind the image of, okay, that's where I'm going. I know the end. It's easy. ADHD kids work backwards from the goal, and they figure out what the steps are to attain it. And that way they don't have procrastination, because they're already at the end. Neurotypical kids start at the beginning, start going, I hope it's going to end up somewhere. So again, that's where the schools fail kids with ADHD, is that most of their kids work from the beginning to the end. Their ADHD kids work from the end to the beginning.
I think anybody with ADHD is like, yes, when I'm interested, this ADHD was terribly named, because when I'm interested,
couldn't be worse.
Yeah, when I'm interested, it's not an attention deficit.
Excess most of the time.
Correct, and this is why you see this over-index of people with ADHD compared to the normal population who are successful. Entrepreneurs, CEOs, is because this hyper-focus.
Creators.
Yeah. What do you see that this does to kids' self-esteem when they're put in a system that just doesn't match how they learn?
It's highly destructive, because anybody who is set up to fail becomes helpless, and they cease to be engaged. Michael Gillick did a study at Harvard that estimated that the average third grader, 9 years old, has heard 20,000 additional negative or corrective messages in school alone. So we still have the playground, home, that sort of thing, where they hear another 20 or 30,000. Don't do this, don't do that, sit up straight, stop fidgeting, you're way too much, you're too much, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional. Basically this constant barrage from other people of you are not acceptable.
I thought that was overall. That's just in school. That's wild.
There's a sort of companion to that, looking at something similar, but a guy named McConney has devoted his research to the development of friendships, and in particular with kids with ADHD. And what he points out is that, again, by the third grade, as for researchers, that's 2 years in the school system, so it's done its damage by then. Third graders, 70% of them have never had a friend. You talk about us being ostracized because nobody wants to be around, and they're getting the fundamental basement level. And everything from then on is going to be interpreted in the way nobody likes me who I am. And from that comes the mask that most older ADHD people wear. They have given up on acceptance. It's going to happen for them. They think it doesn't. And they've decided, I'll change myself, I'll hide myself so I can fit in. A far distant second choice.
What do you say to parents? That just feels so overwhelming to me, that 20,000 negative comments at school. Like, how do you even start as a parent to help this kid so they don't need a mask?
The first thing is that you don't wait. Parents, again, because usually they don't know what's available, or they've been scared about it, or whatever. They have the hope that, well, he'll grow out of it. Or if he just tried harder, it's sort of negotiation with reality. And so by the time the kids are sophomore in high school, damage is done. So I always look at the people who have just rip-roaring ADHD, but who never got treatment and went on to be successful in business, successful spouses, raised good, healthy kids. What did these people know?
Yeah.
And there's only one thing I found that all of them shared in common, and that was when they were a child, they had what I call an advocate. Ideally, it would be a parent. Ideally, it would be the parent they got the ADHD from, who can act as a guide. But it can be anybody. A grandparent, a particularly empathic teacher, a coach, and they deliver a 3-part message. Okay. I know you, I've watched you grow up, and I know for certain that if anybody could have overcome the things you're struggling with through hard work and intellect, it would have been you. So you start off saying, this is not your fault. It's not a lack of effort or anything like that. Second message, what that means is something that we have not identified yet, that's invisible, has been getting in your way in every aspect of your life, not just school, but on the playground, at home, and basically said, you have to change if you even knew how, but you don't. The third part is, and I want you to know that I'll stick with you until together we figure out what's going on and we master it. The third one turns out to be the most important one, because where the damage is done, I see it in adults and some sort of retrospective children. The thing that's really damaging is having this awful, unsolvable problem alone. That's where the damage is done, is to be in this situation alone. I mean, they can take that there's no solution. It's being alone and ostracized. There has to be somebody that remembers I'm a good person.
It's so powerful. And I know that's why we do what we do professionally. It's because the message is I'm going to walk with you. I don't have answers,
right,
but I'm going to walk with you, right? It's so powerful when you have that person who's not trying to change you, but they're just trying to walk with you. Taking the opposite viewpoint, what do you say to adults who are 40, 50, whatever, and have to wear that mask?
First of all, that you understand why they do, that they wear that mask to survive. Untreated ADHD plays a huge role in the development of character and personality. A lot of that comes from just being told thousands upon thousands of times that who you are as you come is not wanted and you better change it in a hurry. But it also comes, so that God has a sense of humor and bad taste, is that it layers on top of that what we call rejection sensitivity dysphoria. People with ADHD are terribly sensitive to all that criticism. Again, nobody likes being rejected or criticized, and nobody likes it. For a person with ADHD, it is devastating. And part of the pain is that people feel utterly alone, utterly cast out. And so the word dysphoria is from Greek meaning unbearable. They wanted to get right there in the name the fact that this was more than just somebody criticizing it, making fun of it. It was unbearable. So they have that as well. So it's important for parents to at least try and put themselves in their child's shoes. What does my child need? They already told me they don't need a nag. They already told me they don't want to be alone, even though they go and hide when they get home. That's not out of choice, it's out of protection. They need to know that they're not alone and that the parent is doing their dead level best to understand what they're dealing with. They're not trying to change it. Their goal is to help that person, their child, become the best child he can be. And that he needs help, guidance, techniques from a knowledgeable adult.
As an adult with ADHD who's had a lot of negative comments pointed at me. Is this a matter of developing empathy? What do you recommend for people who come into your office and they've just heard that their entire life?
Right. The first thing they have to do, is stand back from their own life and look at what they had to deal with and how a child did the very best they could to deal with that. They then need to understand that ADHD is not a damaged nervous system. And in point of fact, they see extended glimpses of how incredibly bright and creative they are. And it's always important to ask the right question. So the question the parent can ask, because it's just as reassuring to them as to the kid, is look back over your entire life. If you've been able to get engaged and stay engaged with literally any task you've tried, have you ever found anything you could not do? Now, that's a question they've never been asked. And so what you see with just about everybody with ADHD is they'll stop by, if I can get engaged, I can do anything. The important thing there is it takes the disorder out of ADHD. It's not a disorder. You can't call something a disorder or an executive function deficit, whatever you want to call it. If a person can do anything, the word that's appearing in the literature is that they are omnipotential. They have the potential to do everything, anything. If the situation is right, it's not a flaw in them. If the situation is interesting, around waters, stand back, they'll be able to do it. They don't need your help if they do that. So the kid has to be notified and reminded of this over and over again. They're not the problem. They've done the best they can. They've tried as hard as they can. They need help. They need knowledgeable help. And most of all, they need an important person in their lives, at least one parent, who gets it. So the parent has to do a lot of education as well, because almost always the parent's understanding of what ADHD is, it's just mind-blowingly wrong.
It's the hyperactive kids running circles in the backyard.
And he could behave if he just tried.
Correct. Lazy and
you meant I'm lazy, stupid, or crazy.
Yeah.
So, in order to do that, parents have to come to peace with themselves that helping the child may, in fact usually does, require some medication. Behavior modification has been shown to have zero effect. The MTA was the largest, longest study of a mental disorder in children ever done. Now, these kids are now in their 40s, so they've followed. Yeah. And what they found was that initially, the whole purpose of the study was to see, which was the better treatment, medication, or behavior management. And so they did what they call maximum dose behavior management. 2 hours every afternoon, Monday through Friday, 2 nights in which the parent came in for 2 hours to learn these techniques to use at home. And at the end of a year, they found that it made no difference. Zip, nothing. And so the nice thing is, it lets parents off the hook. Everybody says, well, you're not strict enough with Johnny, whatever. No, if parents doing the traditional stuff, as you found, doesn't work at all. And so you have to help parents say there are things that do work. You've gotten to the point where now we can talk about the fact that from your own personal experience, you've tried as hard as you can, and the techniques that you were encouraged to use never had a chance of working. This is not a failure of parenting at all. Because again, the traditional responses to ADHD have all been guilt-based. You're a bad parent. It's all been failure, deficit focused. No, you're a failure, try harder. And believe it or not, there are studies out there that show that trying harder actually makes things worse. So one of the things that I do when I'm working with parents is the fact that they don't know me. I'm just this guy they just met. And so you have to help them see what is true and valid from their own lived experience. What I do is I ask questions, like I just did with you. Have you ever found anything you couldn't do? The person looks at their life, the whole thing, and they'll, no, 100% of the time, if I could get engaged, things were easy. I could have told them that till I was blue in the face. Or they could check it against what they know to be true, find it as 100% matched. They've got that idea forever. So with everything, rather than telling people something, you ask, in your experience, have you found this to be true? And again, you already know that it's true. This is not your first rodeo, but it's their first. And so they need to identify, yes, what I'm hearing is true and valid all times and places.
Well, I've learned so much from you about getting curious. And I love that mentality about getting curious. And I think, if that's the number one piece of advice I could give to parents, it's just getting curious instead of just these assumptions. Mm-hmm. And I really agree with what you said about coming at ADHD. There is a medication component, and you combine that with setting up systems, setting up, what does that look like for the child, right? Those two seem to be, from all the students we've worked with, those seem to be the best we know of right now.
Absolutely. And I really need to emphasize that is medications alone, they work wonderfully. They are life-changing, but they are never adequate in and of themselves. They're never enough. All the medications do is they get you in the game on a level neurologic playing field for the first time in your life so that you have the same chance as anybody else. No better, no worse. So a lot of people now have that hope. I'm going to take a pill. I'm not going to have any problems. Goodbye. No. When you get those medications really fine-tuned to that unique individual, that's when the work begins, is to learn what does work for me, and what we call writing your own personal owner's manual about how your nervous system works best. And eventually with adults, it's also usually necessary and desired to go back and reevaluate, who am I? How did I get to be this way? And all of the things, all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune they had to deal with alone as a child. And now as an adult, they can look back with compassion, with understanding, and shut down all that negative self-talk. So for just about everybody, 3 pieces: level the neurologic playing field, or at least see what medication has to offer. Then you make your decision on reality rather than fears. Then learn how this special interest-based nervous system works and how to make it work for you. Then go back and reevaluate your life, and you make the decision about who you want to be and how to do that. Last question I ask: how did you know? How did you understand and acquire the things that you know about, surely about your job, but also about how to have relationships, how to be a good person, how to lead the good life? Where did you learn that? Again, silence. Nobody's ever asked me that question. What I hear 99% of the time is what I know, I taught myself. I recognized I was not made for that school. So I would listen and all that, but I take it back home. I take apart whatever the teacher taught that day, learn it in my way, and put it back in a neurotypical way so I can put it on the test. But I learned it my way. And so that's important to remind people, because they kind of lose track of it, that they're self-made people, that they're survivor. The fact is they're there, and a lot of people aren't, and that they have tremendous strengths, tremendous fortitude. They need to be reminded of that. And they're a good person, and they deserve all the credit for it.
I love that you reflect that to them, because my experience is they don't feel that way.
No. And people tell them their flaws and where they fall short.
Yeah, they don't feel that way. And what you're doing, the nerdy psychology speak is the metacognition piece. Like, you're really helping them build this self-understanding. And everyone that you and I have known who's figured a path through with this thing, they just understand themselves.
Yeah.
And so I love those questions, because it's not do this, which most people do. It's helping them develop these self-understanding skills.
And to understand what they've been dealing with. Because usually all they've gotten is criticism and the demand to do something that they already know is going to fail. Or that hopelessness is a terrible thing.
Yeah, it fosters a lot of empathy as well. My last question for you is, you've mentioned it a couple times, but I want to dive deeper into it, is this idea of the ADHD Owner's Manual. Can you tell me more about that, please?
Sure. Again, all of therapies that are out there, and I've reviewed an article, 52 of them in a row. They were all what we call deficit theories. So they explained ADHD as a lack of something, lack of neurotransmitters, a lack of parent strictness, a lack of something. All of those have completely failed. Every single one. And no improvement in what we call the core features of ADHD. What makes ADHD? And that is high distractibility, impulsivity, hyperarousal, and trouble controlling emotions, which is a biggie. That's where it gets them ostracized and have no friends, is they have meltdowns and nobody wants a part of that. So as they go through life, they will hit those places where they do get in the zone, it's slang here in Denver, hyperfocus is also called, and they see, I gotta really do stuff. It's as they're coming out of being in the zone. When they're in the zone, they don't notice it. When they're coming out, they go, wow, I just got a whole day's work done in about an hour.
Yeah.
Stop right then and there. Carry notebooks and cards or whatever, and write a note to yourself. Do not kid yourself. You're going to remember to do it tonight. That has never happened in the history of the world. Right now, how did I get in the zone? What did I do to stay in? What kicked me out of being in the zone? How did I get back in? At the end of the month, we're going to have 20 cards of what works for you as a unique individual. And we tried to write a one-size-fits-all owner's manual. Couldn't be done. People are way too different, and people change over time. Demands change over time. So you're accumulating these things over a lifetime. So that when you get presented with a task that's important, boring. Okay, number 26. Work in a similar situation. I want to do that, get engaged, knock it out, go have fun. You're working according to what your nervous system can do. You're working according to what you know you can do. It's just that without the cards, it won't come to you when you need it. You have to have something to jog your memory. Now, some of the best techniques will be exhausted. They stop working, so they have to sort of be put aside for 6 months. Then you can bring them back and they work again. So that means you've constantly got to be upping the number of techniques that you know work.
Yeah, I love that. And it rings so true. We know that it's a high level of self-understanding, and then through that is that owner's manual. So where can people find more about you and your work?
The best place to go is a website called attitude.com, ADD, attitude.com. I have more than 120 papers written for lay people about different aspects of ADHD, but most of all, what works, and also how to understand yourself, understand your kids. Because again, most adults with ADHD are going to have kids with ADHD. Half their kids will have ADHD. And so not only do they need to take care of themselves, they need to be the parent to their own child that they never had.
Yeah.
So that this multi-generational trauma that most people have to go through stops with your kid.
Yeah, and also your talks through attitude, especially the rejection sensitive dysphoria one. I've seen a couple. That one was phenomenal, so I highly recommend that. So thank you so much for all you've done for the field, and yeah, you've been just amazing for everyone at Untapped. So thank you for everything.
My pleasure to be here.